I told you that there was a lot of good stuff, so I had to break this into two parts. So here's part two of my interview with Joe.
Now, Joe, we talked about a lot of things, not just themes that are in the book.
Come to me.
Because I do a lot of what you talked about is touched upon in the book. So, I guess my next question to you is when you think about the UX industry, what's top of mind for you these days?
I mean, all that stuff is always top of mind because that need to speak to the business side of the house, I think has not only has it not gone away, it's intensified. So I won't belabor that point because I think we've made it very well. The other thing, quite frankly, that's on my mind a lot now is AI. Partly
Let's
because,
talk about that.
right, in line with all the things that we've talked about so far, I think there is tremendous fear around AI. And part of the reason there's tremendous fear around AI is because in terms of all the sources where people are hearing about AI, social media, right? That from LinkedIn to X to YouTube to courses and lectures and conference talks and books and all sorts of stuff. That fear is good for business. Okay.
Hmm.
It gets attention on posts, it monetizes YouTube videos, it gets people to enroll in programs. That fear is motivation. If you Google AI and UX right now, you're going to get a million variations. In addition to some helpful things, you're going to get a million variations of AI is coming to take your job.
Yes.
Why? Because it's good for business. Okay. Google's algorithm feeds that stuff up to you because it serves a business purpose. All right. So, like everything else in life, behind the hype is some truth. And the truth is that it's not going to magically replace us anytime soon. Now, do I think illustrators are facing a real threat? Photographers are facing a real threat. Fine artists are facing a real threat. Animators are facing. I agree with that wholeheartedly because that stuff will absolutely be bottom line. You know what? We can just have AI do this. I do think those are real problems. I think we're a different animal because I
So
think
are
there's
you
no
saying
possible. Go ahead.
so are you saying AI will not take UX pros job?
No, unless
Tell me more.
that person unless that person refuses to learn about how to develop products that are AI enabled, or unless that person absolutely outright refuses to start using AI tools that can help someone in a UX or product design position offload all the purely tactical, more mundane, more menial, time consuming tasks that, quite frankly, suck up way too much of your time. Okay. And again, in the last 2 decades of my life, I haven't talked to anybody who isn't spending an inordinate amount of time on things that are not strategic. Why? Because they have to be done. If you do research, for example, there's lots of parts of research that aren't this, particularly on the collating and collecting and summarizing and organizing and analyzing front. Okay. So I just did a Gen AI course for UX folks. And the focus of the course was look, sooner or later, your organization is going to dip its toes into AI enabled something. You can either be part of that conversation, which I think we need to be because that's the only way this stuff is going to get done more responsibly, quite frankly. Okay. If the other sides of the house are running that show, they're going to skip a whole lot of stuff because there'll be nobody saying, well, wait, maybe we should think about seriously. Okay. So I think we have to be part of that conversation if this is going to be done ethically, responsibly, inclusively, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the thrust of that. But I also did a workshop that was specifically on AI tools that help UXers and designers of all sorts. There are a lot of people who are teams of one or teams of few who are tasked with UI work, whether that's in their job description or not. And a lot of it is variation. Now, let's face facts. A lot of UI is based on existing design libraries, component libraries, pattern libraries, design systems. A lot of that work is done. So a lot of this is just executing. It's like, okay, I need variations of this and I need these 6 screens, and it's all got to be done in some ridiculously compressed time frame. So what are you going to spend your time doing? All your time is spent literally just churning this shit out. There is no thought required whatsoever. It's an inordinate amount of time. So here's the deal. We in the workshop, we looked at 2 different UI generators. In the span of 30 minutes to 60 minutes, you can generate the same amount of work that you could in 4 to 5 days. So what do you do with the rest of your time? Take the time to think, okay, is this the right thing to do in the first place? And figure out how to make a case to the business folks who are involved. Like, look, I know you want this. I don't think this is the way to get it. This is. And then you generate another set of stuff that is more in line with the strategic thinking that you're advocating for, and you show them that as well. Without this tool, there is no way to do both. Okay, I've been an advocate for that for a long time. When somebody, product manager, for example, insists it has to be like this, I know what's needed, go do it. The only recourse you have to do it. You can't not do it. You're going to piss people off. But what should happen is you should say, I heard you. So we explored this path, like you said, and here's what it looks like. But I also think we should consider A, B, and C because we have this evidence that says people will more likely do this. And here's how that looks. Without this tool, there's no way you have enough time to do both. It's not possible. Okay. That's the thing that I see over and over and over and over and over again. So to me, to say, well, I'm not using those tools, that's insane to me. That's insane. You can buy your time back right now in a major way. And I gave a case study, and most of these things, by the way, are available in the UX 365 Academy, ux365academy.com. From a research perspective, right, how to do that. There's a case study where a team got a bunch of stuff from a client, right? Client sends this, and this has happened to me many times in my career. Big document of stuff, like here's what's wrong. Now, some of it is actually actionable, problem-based stuff. The rest of it is just pure conjecture, functionality stuff like, well, this should work like this. But not everything that lists are problems. So using ChatGPT, this person said, take this list, filter out the parts that are negative, okay? Negative versus neutral. This is a negative impact, and this is just neutral, whatever. Now, again, the document was so big, it would have taken somebody a couple days to do this. In 15 minutes, it filtered out the negative stuff, gave it a list, right? And then that person said, now rank these based on this criteria, because they had a mandate to meet. So you fed it that mandate, said, this is what I'm after. Which things should we focus on? Another list, again, inside of a couple minutes. Now, the goal here is not to say, okay, well, ChatGPT said I should do this, so I'm going to go do it. It's helping you think through that list. It's helping you cull that list and say, all right, where do I start? So even if it's wrong about that list, you've got a place to start.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what if it overlooks something that's pretty important?
You manually check everything, okay? But again, instead of a 7-page document, you got a list of 20 things. And now you're trying to call that list of 20 into a manageable list of what can we actually act on. I can do that manually, right? I've got time for that. But to comb through 7 pages of unorganized, unstructured, this is what happens, right? I don't need to be doing that work. It's a poor use of my time.
I think that's a good point. Like, okay, treat it as a draft one and get it down to, like you're saying, this prioritized list. Go back to your product owner who probably has some knowledge of the domain, right?
Yeah.
And here's what I'm thinking. And that
That's all.
product owner can go, great, we can start with this, or wait, you missed this very important thing. Did I? Okay, well, let's make sure that gets in there, right? So maybe you have some of that SME knowledge that could also help surface that context that sometimes I think AI misses.
Of course it does. And you can feed it that context. Again, where everybody gets hung up, I think they think that the goal of using these tools is to get answers, is to get solutions. It's not. The goal is to use it as an assistant, okay? As another person, another being working with you to say, look, I need to get to this more important stuff. Can you go collate and organize this shit for me so that I can think straight? And that's really all it is. Okay. I use ChatGPT all the time, and I use it as if there was another person in this office that I could bounce stuff off of. And a lot of times when I'm doing training, for example, I've got a bunch of sections that are fairly fleshed out. Like I know where I want to go. And then there's this other part, and I know I want to get from here to here, but I'm stuck in the transition. Like, okay, I know there's something missing between this and this. My brain will not allow me to identify what it is. So you say to the machine, I'm trying to go from here to here. What am I missing? I know there's something in between these two things. What is it? And it'll spit out 5 or 6 things. One of two things happen. Either one of the things on that list is where I want to go, and I go, okay, there it is. And then I go do my thing. Or it's enough. Even getting 6 wrong things is enough to kickstart my brain into, okay, here's where I want to go. Like now I got it. So I do that kind of thing all the time. I don't ever use it for answers. I don't ever use it for anything I'm going to take and apply out into the world. But it erases a tremendous amount of waste in my process, especially, the more busy I get and the more things I take on because I don't know how to say no to anything. It's true. I don't have time,
Same.
right? So I have to figure out like, okay, what's worth doing? If I do an outline and I'm having trouble judging it, again, I give it context. I'm doing a workshop for these people. It's meant to teach them these things. By the time we're done, in a span of 2 hours, they need to walk away with these things. What's missing in this list? Feed it the list. It goes, well, you might want to think about this. You might want to think about this. You might want to think about expanding on this as a subsection of whatever. And I go, okay, that makes sense. And sometimes it'll prompt me. It won't say this, but something that spits back to me will make me think, you know what? I don't even need this part. This is stupid. It's literally it's an assistant. It's helping me move through stuff. And I think all these tools can do that. I mean, we showcased 6 or 7 tools, all right, one of which was Loop Panel's AI research assistant, which is one of the best things I've ever seen in terms of its ability to summarize, its ability to automatically bookmark things and say, these seem to be the most critical points, or here are the commonalities across these 3 sessions, let's say. And it's not so much about being right. It's about having places that you can go back to and at least sort of focus your efforts. So now you're looking at this chunk instead of the whole thing. And it helps greatly. All you're doing
Yeah.
ever is buying your time back. You're not trying to get answers. You're not trying to get a machine to do the work for you, but you're buying a tremendous amount of time back. And I think to not take advantage of that is insane.
I
We've
I
always
really
been
love
asked to do more with less, right? I'll say one more thing.
yeah,
I'll shut up.
no,
We've
I'm with you, absolutely, to do more with less, like you said.
always,
Love that mindset shift because I think I have been guilty of I go in here looking for answers, and then as soon as it comes up with a bullshit answer, I'm like, "Rah, this is
that's not the
crap.
point.
This tool is garbage."
Right. Right. If you use it that way, it is. Amen. The AI
But
hallucinates.
an
Okay.
assistant, I had a friend say, think of it as an intern. You have
Yes.
to check that intern's work.
Correct. And that's my take. Okay. That was the thrust of this workshop, right? This intensity, this pace that we work at, the stuff that's on our plates is never going to get less. As time goes on, whatever the old law about computer chips is, right? In that every advance in the speed of a computer chip outstrips our ability to keep pace with it in the work that we do. That is only going to continue. So if you're behind, if you're perpetually behind, if you have a profound inability to show your value to people because you're stuck doing this stupid menial work just to get it done, that's a problem. It's a problem for you. All right. It's also the reason you don't have anything of worth to show on a resume, in a portfolio, in a case study. What did you spend your time doing? All this menial shit because I don't have time for anything that's more menial.
Right.
This to
Right.
me, I've seen it with my own eyes. Okay. It goes a big, long way in reclaiming some of that time. I think the way I put it in the workshop was this: will AI replace a lot of the tasks that we currently do as researchers, as designers? Yes. Is that a bad thing? No, because there are things we do not and should not be spending our time doing.
Are you finding value in today's interview with Joe? You know how you can tell me? By giving me a like and subscribing to the channel.
Right. And I think that, like you mentioned, there's so many books and articles and conference talks, webinars about AI, but they're not really talking about real specific tactical ways to use it. They're either like, it's doomsday, the sky is falling, it's coming to take your job,
Right.
and you say you're scared. And then you're like, wait, how? Wait, completely? It's taking my job, but then somebody needs to kind of like, wait a minute. Here's what it can be used for, and here's why you still need to be here.
Right. Look, I'm going to date myself. And there are people who will hear this analogy and be like, whatever, old guy. I've been hearing this argument for as long as I've been alive. Okay. I've been doing this for 30 years. If you count my graphic design career, that's like 35, 36 years or something. Way back when desktop publishing became a thing, okay, when there was Aldous PageMaker and Quark Express, and even
I
Word
use the
had page layout capabilities, and designers were like, anybody can do our jobs. Did that happen? No, it didn't. When Visual Basic came about, developers were saying this is going to take our jobs. Did it? No. When wireframing software came about, right, where we could first create, now we can create things that aren't just visual based, they're interactive, they're prototypes, they have some front end code baked into them. This is going to take our jobs. Hasn't happened, not going to happen. Okay. A tool is never going to be the be all end all. I don't care what it is. And none of this, quite frankly, you got to look past the hype as well. When you dig into what AI really is and how it works, at its core, it is machine learning. All right. There's really no quote unquote intelligence at play here. There's a mimicking of neural
right.
networks. There's a mimicking of some of the processes that happen in the brain. It's a very smart way of computing in that the machine actually learns by experience. It's able to filter out things that are inappropriate, that don't work, depending on the feedback we give it. So that's powerful. But I think part of the problem is we look at it like it's this sentient thing, and it isn't. All right. I've been hearing about big data forever. I remember when that first became a thing. The problem with big data was always that nobody can understand what the hell any of it means on the receiving end, unless you have somebody who's a UX person or a product designer filtering it out and saying, look, here are the parts that are relevant. Here are the parts people care about. And here's the type of chart you should use for that versus what the machine spits out, because it's too complex. Not every data point is relevant. You still need a human being to say, here are the parts that matter, and here are the parts that don't. That's never changed all throughout history, and it's not changing anytime soon, in my opinion. Anyone would have the right to say, well, Joe, you're full of shit. If I wasn't actively working, right? If I
Right.
wasn't actively working with companies and clients in all sorts of areas and industries and seeing what happens. But I'm telling you what I see. It's not changing anything. even in places that are really sort of going whole hog and adopting it, it's really not changing anything. Will there be low level clients and companies and startups, maybe, okay, that say, well, we don't need a designer. We could just use AI. Of course, those people were out there in the desktop publishing revolution as well. And what I realized then, because I was an independent, is that those people are not going to be my clients. Those people are not going to be the people who hire me as an employee or as a freelancer or a consultant or whatever. And that's true now. Do those things exist? Sure. Are they going to prevent you from getting a job? No. What will prevent you from getting a job is if you remain ignorant of this technology and say, well, no, I don't use any of that stuff. I'm not embracing any of that stuff. Well, you better.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was heels in resistant for a while just
A year and a
because,
half ago, I was the same way.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not
I think
kidding
we all
you.
were like,
Telling you,
yeah,
I was absolutely that person
same.
until I started seeing it in practice and something clicked and I went, wait a minute. This isn't what I thought it was. That was the biggest thing, right? I literally had a moment where I was like, this is not what I thought this was at all.
Yeah. Or like I was using it for some secondary desk research recently on a onboarding. And how long would it take me to go to Google and look for articles and then go through all the articles and find the relevant data points versus something
Long
like
time.
Perplexity, which provides the sources. So if I want to dig deeper, sure,
Right.
I'll do that.
Right.
It's saved me so much time blindly going through Google and their search results.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can, here's the other thing about Gen AI. And this stuff never makes it out there, right? Because it's more on the tech side of things. You can control or constrain that hallucination to some degree as well. In every Gen AI system of every kind, there's a function called temperature that's built to ChatGPT. There's literally part of the prompt you give it is use a temperature setting of, and it's like 1 to 5. But if you look it up, you'll see it. 1 is be creative, be open, make things up, come up with variations. And 5, and I may have it backwards. And 5 is no, stick to reality. Okay, if you can't verify it, don't give it to me. That can be controlled to some degree. Now you're still going to get some degree of it'll go off the reservation every once in a while, but that can be controlled, can be constrained. You give it a role. You say, assume the role of this person in this profession with this many years of experience, and return things to me from that perspective. There's lots of ways you can control this to make what it gives you more useful. But again, it can't do that work by itself, which is why you need all these prompts and input. Even Midjourney and all those other things that are image generators, they're really only as good as what you put into them and how well you sort of teach it what the hell you need in the first place. Otherwise it just sort of wildly comes up with whatever. So again, I don't buy the hype.
Yeah, I think that that's key. And it takes some skill and some experience to write strong prompts. And it's not like you can go and use somebody's checklist. Every search is different, right? So I think that it's difficult when you don't have, oh, what is the best way I write this prompt? What do I include? What do I not? I think that there's some upskilling that could go on there to really
Yeah,
get these
sure.
tools for you
Sure.
in the best ways.
Sure, sure. But it's minor. To me, it's an exciting thing, and it can be a positive thing. Back to, again, going all the way back to where we started. It doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Okay. You can use it to accelerate a lot of what you're doing, not to give you the answers, but to help you reclaim some of your time, right? And your headspace and all sorts of other things.
Yeah, for sure. So, Joe, thinking a little broader than you mentioned you've been around the block a couple times, a few years. What do you hope the future of UX might look like?
Ah, that's a sort of a big list. But I mean, honestly, what I want more than anything else is I want more of this pressure that we keep talking about that's come up multiple times in this conversation I want a lot of this to be lifted. And I want people who are talking about it publicly to spend more time talking about how all these challenges that we're facing can be and are overcome on a daily basis. Okay. I come in contact with a lot of people every week of my life. And a lot of them are doing extraordinary work in the face of the same ridiculous constraints that we all have, in the face of the same office politics that everybody deals with, right? I mean, if you have more than two people in a room, you've got politics. It's happening. There's a lot of amazing things happening, and it doesn't get any airtime. Why? Because there are algorithms that dictate what you're going to be shown because, again, it makes money. So we got to look past this and we got to stop joining in with the negativity, with the complaining. Resist that urge to be like, well, everything sucks. Not really. Everything doesn't suck. There are wins. Some of them seem to be small wins, but there are wins nonetheless. It's forward progress nonetheless. So I guess what I want as a profession, I want more positivity. I want us to say we're in an amazing position to do amazing things. And in a lot of cases, even where they're small things, they're still amazing things. We're instigating significant change. We're shaping the things that go out into the world. That is no small thing. So I want that. And I want more collaboration with other professions. I really, really do. And I think that in a lot of cases, that starts with us. You have two choices. You can say, well, they should be open to collaborating with me as well. Of course they should. It's kind of like relationships, right? And I've heard this advice before. Somebody has to start. Doesn't matter who's right. Somebody has to start. Somebody has to extend a hand and say, you know what? I really want your help with this. It might as well
That's
be
so
you,
true.
okay?
It's very true. How many times have you been in an awkward situation and you're just like the elephant in the room, you don't talk about it. And it's like, look, there's weirdness here. I don't know why. Let's figure it out.
Exactly. 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 And it's okay, right? Like when I'm doing whiteboard exercises, a lot of times I'll get to some place in a workflow and somebody will make a face, right? Somebody will be like, or you'll get one of these. And I'll stop. And I'll say, all right, what's the face about? And they're like, I think we're all among friends. Tell me what the face is about, because 9 times out of 10, there's something happening here that is not good. The only way we solve it is if you tell me what's behind that reaction, and they'll tell me. And in a lot of those instances, there's at least one other person in the room, and it's usually somebody like a product manager or someone who's removed, right, from day-to-day work, who will be like, I had no idea that was happening. Okay, so where are we now? Now we're in a place where we can do something about it. Because all those people are feeling the effect of whatever bullshit is going on in that moment, in that part of the workflow. But no one's talked about it because no one knows what it is. And the two people that do know what's going on haven't said anything because, well, no one gives a shit. Well, that's an assumption, right? So it's someone's got to be the facilitator. In this case, it happens to be me, to say, look, let's just bring it all out into the open, good, bad, or otherwise, and figure out what we can solve and what we can't. Doesn't matter. We're allowed to disagree. Who cares? Like, why do you care, literally, if someone disagrees with you? Like, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Their reality is their reality. Yours is yours. Either you come to agreement, you do the thing, or you don't. And if you don't, you don't. You move on and you reserve your energy for some place where you can actually make a difference, make an impact. Instead of dwelling on, well, that person's just stubborn. Yeah, they are. So what?
And you know what? So are you sometimes.
Exactly. So who do you tell? I'm Sicilian, right? It takes effort. It is always, to this day, it takes effort to be that open. It's not my nature at all.
True.
People think I'm magically this way. It's not true. It takes work.
And if you think about it, why don't we, as the UX folks, the empathetic people that we're supposed to be, the user focused people that we are supposed to be, why don't we take on that responsibility of creating that safe space and that
Yes.
open environment by breaking apart that tension and just calling it out?
Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. Might as well be you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, Joe, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've had
Agreed.
so much fun. I've learned so much. I have one final question for you, and
Yeah.
that is where can folks find you?
On LinkedIn more often than I should be. So you'll certainly find me there. You will find me at the UX 365 Academy, which is www.ux365academy.com. My public website is givegoodux.com. You'll find me on YouTube. I'm still holding out on X despite what it's become because I'm stubborn. And I'm like, I was here first, before that guy bought it and all those places. And, you know, I'm one of those people who answers every message they get for better or worse. And that's a lot. This
It
is a
is a
lot of
lot.
times what I do instead of relaxing as I sit and I answer email, or direct messages or whatever. And that's because I feel privileged to be where I am. The very least I can do is respond to people, even if it's to say, look, I wish I had time to answer that question. I don't. But here's where you should look. Here are things you should think about. I encourage anyone who listens to this to seek me out in those places. And if you're curious about something, have a question, unsure, uncertain, ask. Happy to help if I can.
I love that. And I find you, Joe, I found you very approachable, very relatable. And I think that we just saw a little bit about how the sausage was made. Why you come off that way is because you actually are.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much, Joe. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Take care.
All right. Bye.